the Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
Now entering the game for Philly Pressbox Radio, Bill Furman and Jim Chet Chesko.
It's Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. Welcome to the Philly Pressbox Radio Roundtable, brought to you by the Irish Rover Station House in Langhorne, PA. Station Western PA, Cavs, Philly Tailgates, and the Edge of Philly Sports Network. I'm Bill Furman. I'll be your host tonight, along with my partner, Jim Chet Chesko. And Chet, or should we say Angry Chet, is not one bit happy with the Sixers. They certainly gave us plenty to talk about. The Phillies just lost again. They've been swept out of San Francisco at the quarter turn of the season. They are 3 games under 500. The Flyers made some big news with the hiring of Keith Jones as president and Danny Briere officially as the general manager. Who saw the Jones hiring coming? Heck, man, there is plenty to talk about. And you, my friend, are a sour Philly sports fan.
Bill, I know we're going to get some hockey talk in, some baseball talk in, even a little beer talk, because as you are well aware, it is American Craft Beer Week. I am celebrating accordingly. But in the meantime, we're going to talk Sixers, and my head just might explode, Bill, because not only am I disappointed, I am angry, and I ain't kidding.
Well, I know. I've been chatting with you on and off since Sunday, and I know you're not happy. But, hey, we're going to talk about we got a couple first-time guests coming to Philly Pressbox Radio tonight. The voice of the Flyers, Jim Jackson. That's going to be fun. And Eric and Jay Von Czoernig will be joining us from Von C. Brewing Company. But, Chet, first, let's get this off our chest. The Sixers' effort, and I'll emphasize effort. We'll start with that. Let this city down like never before. Hey, time's yours, pal.
Bill, I'm just going to ramble for a minute or two, and I hope I don't blow my top. But, yeah, I'm pissed. I'm so pissed with what happened with the Sixers in games 6 and 7. Look, this 76ers team was not perfect. I know they weren't a perfect team. As far as talent, they were pretty close, though, to the Celtics. We've seen for many years that, the team with the most talent doesn't always win, but it sure helps to have a lot of heart. But this team, as I said, it had talent, maybe the most talent that it's had since that Iverson bunch that went to the finals 22 years ago. Now, in all honesty, the Celtics, yeah, they are probably the better team, but they too had their troubles frequently, in fact, this entire postseason against both the Hawks and the Sixers. Heck, they lost, 3 or 4 games at home in Boston. And then Philly, down 2-1, somehow won the next 2 games, including one of them in Boston. And that was thanks largely to the play of stars James Harden and Joel Embiid. And then they had the chance to win Game 6, finally, to get to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 2 decades. They had Game 6 at home. They led that game with 5 minutes left, only to fall apart down the stretch. At home. Yeah, they were in Philly with their fans behind them, but Boston took the lead, and then, everything just fell apart. Things just went haywire. I hate using the word choke, Bill. I really do, but it felt to me like a choke on the part of the 76ers in Game 6. They seemed confused and tentative as soon as the Celtics took the lead. They somehow forgot to get the ball, or forgot how to get the ball to Embiid down the stretch. You knew that winning Game 7 up in Boston would be a big ask. They had won 2 of 3 there, though, previously in the series. But still, they could have done it. It would have been a great story. They actually led after a quarter in Game 7. They were very much in the game early in the second half. And then, poof, the home team looked like the one that really wanted to win the game. They wanted to keep playing into June. The 76ers, meanwhile, are 10-9-8 76ers. Well, they looked like a bunch of young'uns who were at the playground and saw these, bigger, taller, more talented guys come on the court, and they got scared. They were afraid to shoot. Everybody looked tentative. How does a team get outscored 33-10 in 1 quarter of an elimination game? I'll tell you how, by having alleged superstars who while talented, just don't seem to have the heart or the want to that is needed in a big game like this. We're going to get into the shortcomings of those two Sixers stars who were, so good most of the regular season and even in parts of that particular playoff series. But over the last 5 quarters of the Sixers season, they were awful, and they got their coach fired in the process. But bottom line, I'm mad about what went down, and some people will find this hard to believe, Bill. I'm more upset about this loss than I was about the Eagles Super Bowl 57 loss. So I got a lot to get off my chest. There's some of it. Let's talk.
Well, man, we got a lot to talk about. Good. First of all, I was actually going to bring up the Super Bowl somewhere in my conversation. I didn't know you were, but this isn't as bad as the Super Bowl.
For me, it was. You know why? The Eagles won a Super Bowl 5 years ago. The Sixers, they hadn't won a championship since 1983. They've only been to the finals that one time this century, the very start of the century in 2001. And this was their real good chance because they had a pretty solid roster. They were ahead 3-2 in the series. And had they won that series, had they closed it out, they would have been the favorites to beat Miami and whoever came out of the West. I know they could have still lost that, but they would have been the favorites. So they would have had a legitimate chance. So that's why I was so pissed, because they had a missed opportunity.
Yeah, well, and I won't dwell on the Super Bowl, but my thought there is the Eagles were up by 10 at halftime. Should have won that game. Anyway, let's go to Joel Embiid, because you know that is a topic that I don't care much to talk about. I told you years ago, 3, 4, they would never win with him. They won't ever win with him. He does not make the players around him better. They try to build a team where they can't run the court. And I texted you this actually over on Sunday, I think. They can't run the court because he can't run the court. When they try to set up a half-court offense, it's always him. And Tobias Harris becomes a spectator. Everybody else becomes a spectator because when it's a half-court game, the ball goes to Joel and everybody stands at the arc and waits for him to do something. It isn't going to work. It didn't work. And my other real big comment I will make is in the case of Glenn Rivers getting fired, do you think maybe you should have made an adjustment on Jason Tatum? Maybe?
Yeah, that was my big complaint with Rivers. Now, to be fair, I think Rivers had a pretty good series for the most part, but in Game 5 and in Game 6, Game 6 and 7, when the Celtics went to the 2 big lineup and Tatum started to get hot, he could not make any kind of adjustment. They didn't know how to make the adjustment for Embiid getting doubled constantly. They didn't know how to make the adjustment to the Celtics, big 2 lineup in there. And so for that reason, I can see why Rivers got the axe. But I mean, yeah, let's face it, he was a scapegoat because it was really the play of Harden and Embiid in those key games that really led to his firing. Look at these stats. We know what Jason Tatum did in the fourth quarter of Game 6 and in Game 7 when he poured in 51 points. Look at what Joel Embiid and James Harden did in that last game. That's ridiculous. I mean, they disappeared. They were awful. I know that James Harden had 2 very, very, very good games, 42 and 45 points, helped them win Games 1 and Game 4. He was also good in Game 5, Harden, but he was missing in action in Game 7, and Embiid was no better.
Yeah, and the turnovers, the constant turnovers, and everybody was included in that. And the other thing about River, I don't know, how well you can develop a bench in the NBA, but he didn't have one. Now, whether that goes to Daryl Morey putting this team together or Glenn Rivers not being able to develop that bench, but they kept squeezing it down. He got lucky in one game. Niang came in and played pretty well, and who was the other guy? Came in, scored some points for him. Melton. Had a nice game for him. But overall, it ended up being a 6-7-man team down the stretch. It's not going to win. And it wouldn't have won in this next round either because they just didn't have the depth. Again, whether that's Morey's fault on putting the team together, Rivers' fault for how he used them.
Sixers have played 3 game 7s over the last 5 years. And Bill, I think we know how.
Same old story, same old song and dance, my friend.
And we also know how well Doc Rivers has performed in closeout games. Let's look at his stats over the last 20 years. Oh my God. How many times can you blow a 3-1 or a 2-0 or a 3-2 lead in the series? Ask Glenn Rivers. He can tell you how many. It's what, 8? Unbelievable.
Yeah. And what, actually, isn't it 10? Do you have them all? I think it's
I don't
10.
know.
I think it was 9 before this one. I think it's 10. And the next highest is 5 ever by a coach. But hey, Chet, I wanted to, there's a basketball guy, Joe Repchinski, who is a basketball lifer, played basketball at LaSalle back in the early 70s, coached basketball at North Catholic for quite a while. And he, like I say, he's a basketball lifer. And Joe, on one of my posts, had this perspective, and I wanted to share it with everybody because I think it's really good. Congratulations and good luck to the Boston Celtics. Their playoff victory over the 76ers took place 10 years ago. But both teams were at the bottom of the standings. The Celtics looked at their proud tradition built by Russell, Cousy, K.C. Jones, Bird, Sam Jones, Callens, Parrish, and decided to win their way back to the playoffs. Their success is a credit to them. The Sixers looked at their proud tradition of Chamberlain, Irving, Cunningham, Malone, Iverson, Greer, Jones, and decided to lose on purpose towards playoff success. They remain in the losing playoff game mode. 76ers lost out on that pick. It didn't work out and lost out with a management team that doesn't influence playoff success on the court. They lost when they drafted Ben Simmons. They lost when they chose Simmons over keeping Jimmy Butler. They lost when they drafted local player Mikal Bridges with his mother in the audience, a 20-year employee of the Sixers, and traded him. I know it's just business, but it would be nice if it was winning playoff business. Imagine a lineup of Embiid, Tatum, Butler, Maxey, and Bridges. You could coach Jimmy, line them out of retirement to distribute the ball and win championships. He says, I'm paraphrasing the Harry Chapin song Taxi. Both teams got what they asked for such a long time ago. How true is this? What a take by Joe.
Yeah, good stuff right there. He's not wrong. I was okay with the process, Bill. You know that while a lot of people hated it, I thought it could have worked. And yeah, I know how you felt about it. But the problem was, other than Embiid, they made what turned out to be horrible picks with, the likes of Markelle Fultz and Jahlil Okafor and even the guy who won Rookie of the Year, Michael Carter-Williams. He's now out of a job, hoping to catch on with another team. So they had opportunities, but other than Embiid, nobody is still here from that whole entire 9 or 10-year process.
Well, that's the problem, I think, and that's Joe's point. You didn't have the management team in place to evaluate the talent, didn't make the right picks, and there's guys all over the league who were picked after your guys who are all playing successful basketball for somebody.
Yeah, so now we're into the offseason, and Doc Rivers has been fired, but there are other decisions. Now, we found out today that James Harden has opted out of that player option. He's looking for a 4-year deal. I hope to hell that he doesn't return to the Sixers, but it sounded today from the GM or whatever his title is, Morey, that he would like to have Harden come back. There's about 3% of Sixers fans who want James Harden back. The guy is going to be 34 this summer. We saw how he performs in playoffs. Why in the hell would you bring James Harden back?
No, you can't bring him back, and you certainly can't bring him back for 4 years. I mean,
no.
If you thought maybe you could get a year out of him, maybe. But let me ask you this, Chet. With Harden, with Embiid, and I'll say Embiid because he's soft. He's mentally soft in my mind. Is he going to be able to recover from this? From the Philly fans. Philly fans are tearing him up. National fans are tearing him up.
Yeah.
Mitch Williams recovered from his home run to Joe Carter. Mitch Williams was competing. He got beat in that situation by another player. Joel Embiid let this team down and let this city down. does he recover from the harassment that he's going to get from Philly fans?
Well, that is the big question, Bill, and we won't know that until next year. And, he's saying, for the most part, all the right things that he knows he has to get better. And hopefully the Sixers management and whoever the new coach is know that they're going to have to make some adjustments when he's on the court offensively, because you're right, he does slow them down. He's a defensive presence, yeah, but you'd like to see a 7-footer get more rebounds. You'd also like to see the offense move a little more fluidly than it does when he's out on the court. Yeah, winning more games this year in the regular season was nice, but for Morey to say that they made progress this year, I don't think they did. Winning a couple more games in the regular season means absolutely squat right now, because here we are in the playoffs, and like 24, 26 other teams, they're sitting home right now, again, not having gotten past the second round. So, no, they didn't really improve in that aspect. So it's going to have to be a lot of changes, and I can't see them getting past the first or second round next year, because unless they can pull a rabbit out of the hat, it just ain't going to happen.
Well, let's before we run out of time on this topic, let's talk about Daryl Morey. Where does he fit into this equation in your mind? Is he responsible for that bench? What's your thought?
Yeah, he is. To a large extent, he is. He brought virtually all of those guys here, if not all of them. So I like the Melton addition. Niang is okay, for a 7th or 8th guy on the team. The trade for McDaniels, giving up Thibault actually hurt them, I thought, in this series, because Thibault could have at least given you some defense. McDaniels had maybe a little glimmer of a good game in the first or second game, but otherwise he was pretty much invisible. So, some of that is on Morey, but now it's really going to be on Morey as far as what is next. He's got to hire a coach, and boy, I don't know who that's going to be. I'll put up some of these odds. There's one betting site that says JJ Redick is actually the favorite. Boy, I don't get that. Nick Nurse, Sam Cassell, Monty Williams are the top candidates in my mind, and Budenholzer, who was with Milwaukee a couple of years back. So he's got a big task ahead of him right now. I don't know who the coach is going to be, but all I know is I don't want James Harden on the team.
Yeah, well, I think he'll be gone. One other thing I want to throw at you: Tobias Harris, as you showed on that one graphic, still has another year left on his contract.
Yeah.
Is that something you need to move as well, or and I'll give Harris maybe a benefit of the doubt here. Maybe we talked about this a few weeks ago, where he has kind of settled back into a 4 guy because of the big 3. Can Harris still play, and would he play better if he was not in the shadow of some of these other guys?
I like Tobias Harris. I think he can be a contributor. He's got the 1 year left on the contract, but because of that fact, he's actually a very good trade chip, because a lot of teams will want him, knowing that he's got a contract that expires next year. So if I were a betting man, I would say Harris is going to be traded this offseason, because they know they have to make some moves, and he's one of the guys who can be traded. And by the way, if anybody is wondering what WIP's Howard Eskin thinks about this whole situation, I have the answer right here.
The 76ers organization is one of the all-time jokes. They are a disgrace. They are absolutely one of the worst organizations in the history of Philadelphia sports.
Well, I don't know that we can really argue with that right now, Chet.
Yeah, Howard is looking like he knew what he was talking about for the last year or two, when he said Embiid is soft and not really a true MVP, and that Daryl Morey is not a great general manager. So right now, I can't say I disagree with what Eskin's saying.
Well, I didn't know that Howard was not a Embiid fan, but
no, he's not.
I'm with him.
Yeah. Bill, we got to move along here.
All right. Are you okay? Are you okay now?
I'm not okay. But I have a beer. We're going to talk more beer later, and let's move along.
All right. Well, hey, spring is here. It's time for you to save some money with Allstate's pay-as-you-go auto insurance.
It is, Bill. That is true. And I have this graphic that I'm going to put up as I tell you about Allstate. Allstate's pay-as-you-go auto insurance puts you in control. You only pay for the miles you drive with the same full coverage that a traditional policy offers. Pay-per-mile insurance gives customers greater control of their insurance costs. See how much you can save with pay-per-mile car insurance by calling your local agent. In Westchester, Pennsylvania, that is Dave Lavoie. And by the way, in addition to auto insurance, Dave's Allstate office also offers home and renter's insurance, life insurance, business insurance, and more. Allstate in Westchester. Call Dave Lavoie, 610-430-0700. Again, 610-430-0700.
Well, hey, Chet, as we mentioned in the opening, the Flyers with a surprise hiring Keith Jones as team president, and they finalized Danny Briere as the GM. What do you make of that?
I kind of like the move, actually. There's a lot of discussion about whether Jonesy is the right guy for the role because he hasn't had any front office experience previously, but he certainly knows hockey. So I think he deserves a chance. He apparently proved that in his interviews with the team. I'm okay, Jane. Don't worry. I'm okay. I think Jonesy deserves, a couple of years to see if he can help turn this Flyers team around.
Well, it's certainly an unusual hire. I think, you're on WIP one morning and you're the team president the next. But, he's been saying all the right things. And if they can surround themselves, him and Briere as a young GM, they can surround themselves with the right people, listen to those right people. Why not? It's not. Howard Eskin talks about the Sixers organization. The Flyers organization isn't in a whole lot better shape. So, maybe it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I think it's gonna help improve the situation. And we're gonna have an interview with Jim Jackson in a minute. But I got to tell you first of all about what's happened at the Irish Rover. Always great things there, Bill, including dinner specials and killer burger Thursdays. Some great dinner specials this weekend. I'm going to go with the chicken parm. I love chicken parm. The Irish Rover also has a slew of fun spring cocktails. Some of those sound quite tempting. And they have live music on most weekends. This weekend, they have dueling pianos on Saturday evening. Of course, there's always 24 beers on tap and a great bunch of beer tenders and wait staff at the Irish Rover Station House. It's on Bellevue Avenue in Langhorne. You can get more details on their website IrishRoverStationHouse.com. And we should get to our interview with Jim Jackson, don't you think, Bill?
Absolutely. Let's get to it.
All right. Jim Jackson and me just a couple of hours ago. The 76ers season is over sooner than hoped yet again. The Phillies have underachieved, so we're going to talk a little Flyers hockey. Making his first ever visit to Philly Pressbox Radio is longtime Flyers play-by-play man Jim Jackson. Hey, JJ, welcome.
Hi, glad to be here.
Jim, you've been calling Flyers games for 30 years now, hard to believe. You've been through a bunch of management changes, and we got another one last week. Danny Briere getting the interim tag removed, finally, and Keith Jones named president of hockey operations. I heard you on the radio last week, but you like these moves. What makes these good hires?
Well, basically, when you talk about Danny Briere, I don't think there's a person out there who's done more to prepare for this job. I've heard a lot of the diatribe out there about, wow, inexperienced GM. Well, the only way you're going to get a person with more experience than Danny was an ex-GM. And then we would have been hearing, oh, they're retreading a guy. So, Danny went through the entire process when his playing career ended to prepare himself to be a GM. He experienced almost every level of an organization, from down in the minor leagues through analytics, through being an assistant GM. He's prepared. He's ready for it. And Keith Jones, absolutely, it shocked me. He's good at keeping a secret, let me tell you. But I will say that in being around him the last 17 years on a daily basis, the guy knows the league as well as anybody. And also in being around him the last 17 years, I've learned that he is a very shrewd guy. He's dumb like a fox, Jim. He's one of these guys who basically he uses his humor because he is a very funny guy as a shield for how shrewd he really is. He knows this game, knows what it takes to build teams, knows what it takes also to be popular and be a team that will generate interest among a fan base that he knows very well. So I think both are great choices.
Yeah, you mentioned the humor. Some people view Jonesy as this good color commentator who has, a great sense of humor. He's a fun-loving guy, but they see that as some sort of a detriment to his ability to make personnel moves and whatnot. I think that's unfair, if you ask me.
Well, I totally understand it. That's really their only exposure to Jonesy was on radio or on as his broadcaster. And either time when he was in the studio for NBC or certainly when he was on radio, he was all about humor. And then when he was calling games, he's calling games, he's calling plays. He's not necessarily talking about his theory on team building and all that. But I got a chance to be around him. We'd go to morning skates together. We'd watch pregame skates, and he would just talk about players, and he'd see things that I don't think the normal person sees, just even from a pregame skate about a player, and then lo and behold, during the game, it would come true. So I don't blame the fans for having that reaction, because they're really their reaction to him, or their exposure, I should say, to him has been through him with jokes and so forth, that he's very good at that too. But I've seen the other side of him, which we're now going to see a lot more of, and he's really, really shrewd, believe me.
So what will the approach be now? What kind of moves can Briere and Jonesy make this offseason? And what should they do to turn this once very well thought of franchise around?
Well, that's the big question. And I can't sit here and tell you that I know. Most people are going to say, come on, you guys are buds. I'm not. I can tell you right now, I will be talking a lot less to Jonesy now. I'm sure of that. He's not going to want to talk to media people, because he is really about keeping it within the team. So I think it's going to be pretty buttoned down. Judging by what they've both said, I think they're going to really go into a pretty aggressive rebuild here. They're saying this year might not be a lot of wins. The way I look at it, the way the team is currently constituted, you get rid of a couple players perhaps who don't fit in with John Tortorella. But if you add Sean Couturier, Cam Atkinson to the mix we had last year, plus a couple of the other younger guys like Tyson Forster maybe join in, and the younger guys we had maybe take another step, I don't see any reason why this team can't contend for the playoffs. But that's not what I'm hearing out of both Danny and Jonesy's mouth. So I'm assuming we might see some pretty big moves, not just with the 30 and older players, but maybe some of the younger players. I'm only guessing that from what they're saying. So it really is, Jim, it's a matter of how deep they want to go into a rebuild. Do you want to just maybe move a Kevin Hayes who's in his 30s? Obviously, James Van Riemsdyk's contract is up, and Justin Braun's retired. That would be very mild. Do you want to get into the young veterans like Ivan Provorov and Travis Konechny? Are they now in the movable category? And then even below that, the younger players, the 24s, 23s, 25-year-olds in that group, Carter Hart even fits into that. Are they thinking that he could also be moved? I don't know at this point. It really depends on how aggressive they want to be. Personally, I think the team, with a couple of subtractions, some more growth from the youngsters, and you throw a big addition in Sean Couturier and a big addition in Cam Atkinson back into this mix, I think they can be very competitive, but that might not be the way they're thinking.
Well, the new management team will work with a head coach who's had a much longer time behind the bench, with various teams than these new guys in management. What is John Tortorella's role going to be as far as decision-making? Will he have more say than most coaches do?
Hard for me to compare to other coaches. He will have a say. There's no doubt. I think any good organization, quite frankly, the coach should have at least some say. You are building the team. If you're a general manager, if you're the president of hockey operations, you're building the team to work well with the coach you have. I know both Danny and Jonesy think very highly of Torts, so they plan on moving ahead with Torts. So if that's the case, you've got to build your team based upon players that are going to fit in under Torts. So there has to be some give and take there, of course. But I think John Tortorella is going to always be telling these guys which players he thinks are good fits and which are not. I'm sure those discussions are happening, and already have happened, and they're kind of deciding who they're going to move on from and who they may not keep with them, and who they will have with them moving on with this team as they try to take the next step. So absolutely, he'll have a big say. Comparing him to other coaches, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what goes on in other organizations, but he's definitely going to have, I think, a big say in the development of this team.
Hey, by the way, JJ, in the 30 years you've been calling Flyers games, do you realize how many head coaches the team has had in that time?
Did you figure it out? I counted
did.
I counted it a couple of years ago. Now, I don't count interims, so but if you don't count interims, I'm probably at 30 years, I would guesstimate in the 13 range, maybe.
Yeah, it's about right. I think counting Mike Yo, who I guess was interim, maybe another one, 15 total. So
Yeah.
yeah, 15
Scott
coaches in
Jordan was
30
also
years.
interim. So yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, 13 full-time coaches though over 30 years is a lot.
Yeah.
Although look throughout the league, the shelf life of an NHL coach is about 3 years, maybe less than that these days, seeing some of these moves I'm seeing made with really good teams, losing their, getting rid of their coaches. I mean, when you think about Gerard Gallant in New York, I mean, that team was one of the best teams in the league. They happened to lose in 7 games in the playoffs, and he's gone. So it's a tough life being a head coach in the National Hockey League. Your shelf life is not very long. There are not many John Coopers out there. There are not many guys who last, 5, 6, 7 years with the same team.
Well, you've lasted quite a while, JJ. And I just realized this the other day, too. Speaking of numbers, having been there for 30 years, you've actually been calling Flyers games now longer than Gene Hart. I got to be honest, that kind of blew my mind when I figured that out.
Yeah, it blows my mind, too. When I start to think my first year was 1993. So from that time to now is longer than the Flyers from their existence, their start, to when I came here.
Yep.
That I cannot wrap my arms around because so much had happened when I came here. They had already won the cups. They had the streak team. They had all those great 80s teams. And this gentleman called those games, and he was the eloquent messenger of glorious times. So, he's the best. I always tell people I did not replace Gene Hart. I followed him. Nobody will replace Gene Hart. He is and always will be the voice of the Flyers. I'm just the television play-by-play voice of the Flyers. And, it's always an honor to know that I did follow him. But to think that I've been here longer than he was, I cannot wrap my arms around that either.
Well, speaking of other guys who've gone behind the mic, one just decided to sail off into retirement. I have a hunch you have some great stories about Steve Coates. Any that you could tell without getting anybody in trouble?
No. There's so many great stories. I mean, I'll tell you one. When I first came here, this guy was my mentor. He was my first broadcast partner. When I came down, he was in charge of introducing me to everybody and getting me acclimated. I even lived with him for 2 months down in Bobby Clark's shore house. And I got some stories from there that we can't tell. But I do have some stories. I mean, the one thing was he told me from day one when I got here, you're going to eventually meet Ed Snyder. Prefers Mr. Snyder. So we want, you're a newcomer here. It's got to be Mr. Snyder. And he reminded me of that about 4 or 5 times. As it turned out, I didn't get a chance to meet him until the first preseason game I did. We went down to the locker room afterwards. And so I've just done my first ever NHL game. I'm on top of the world. I'm clearly, adrenaline pumping through me. It was awesome. They won the game. They beat the team I'd actually broadcast for, the New Jersey Devils. A lot of the former Utica Devils were on the team for that exhibition game. So it was kind of a surreal afternoon for me. But we go down there, and there's Mr. Snyder in the locker room. And, of course, I've completely forgotten what Coatsy tells me. He introduces me, and I say, "Hi, Ed. How are you? Nice to meet you." And I could see Coatsy next to me almost like dropping. He's like cringing. He was like, "Oh, no, you don't do that." And Mr. Snyder looks at me with that steely-eyed look of his. It says, "Very nice to meet you." And I think this was kind of a shot to say, "You don't call me Ed," but he says, "I've heard a little bit of your work, and you do a good job, and I know you continue to get better." So that was his way of saying, you got a long way to go before you call me Ed, I think. But as it turns out, I mean, I found out he didn't like Mr. Snyder all that much. But at the time,
I heard, yeah.
Do I even still have a job? I didn't even know if I still had a job after that. But that's a mild Coatsy story. There are so many great stories from Coatsy on the road, of course, and just the joy to be around one of the funniest human beings. It's going to be so strange, Jim, this year. No Coatsy on the road now, no Jonesy on the road. He may be on the road, but he'll be at the front of the plane, not in the back of the plane with the rest of us broadcasters anymore. And my producer of 30 years, Brian Cooper, also retired. So I just don't really know what I'm going to do with myself. Tim Saunders and I are like, who's left? It's just you and me. So it's really going to be a strange year without Jonesy next to me in the booth, without Coatsy doing what Coatsy does, which is be the life of the party, without Brian Cooper in my ear. It's just going to be a weird year for me. I can tell you the new era of Orange. I know what it means to the fans and what the Flyers organization wants it to mean to the fans. It's going to mean something different to me. There's going to be a new era of Orange in the booth for sure.
2 quick questions before we wrap it up. It's mid-May. The Phillies are still under 500. Will they turn it around, get back to the postseason?
You know what? The funny thing is, Jim, they might not even have to and still make the playoffs. Baseball, I don't want to get off on a rant here, but the baseball playoff system is ridiculous. 162 games, you should not have that many teams making the playoffs. I was looking at it today. They're what, a game or two under 500, and they're a game out of the wild card. So they don't even have to get it going. This team will absolutely make the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, I will be so shocked because A, they're better than they're playing. They're going to go on a run. They're going to be an above 500 team, I think. But B, I think 500 might very well get you into the playoffs anyhow. And as we saw last year, you don't have to win the division. Just get in the playoffs and you can go all the way to the World Series and you can possibly win the World Series. So I'm not panicking at all. Look where they were last year at this time. They're fine. The pitching, I'm a little worried about the depth there. I think the offense will get a little more consistent as long as they keep Bryce healthy. And I just think they're fine, mainly because of the system. Now, if it was just the division winners, there's 6 or 7 back of the Braves, who I think are better than their record. They should be taking off at any time too. Then I'd be a little concerned, but you don't have to win your division anymore. So I think they're fine.
Last thing, Hurricanes, Panthers, Dallas, Vegas. Who wins the cup this spring?
A team from a warm climate. I'm so far off, Jim, on my picks. I mean, I originally picked Boston, gone.
Of course, yeah.
I then went to Edmonton, gone. So I don't think anybody wants me to pick them at this point. I would probably say Dallas is the best, the most well-rounded of the teams. If you go goaltender, defense, on out. But Carolina can check anybody into the ice. Florida has that mojo. They got something special. I was around. I did some games for TNT. I was around them for their first series and love that team. Love the makeup of it. Love what Paul Maurice is doing. So I wouldn't put it past them. But Carolina with that checking that might give Florida trouble. Florida's physicality might give Carolina trouble. Dallas so well-rounded. And then Vegas, I mean, their goaltending situation's odd, but the rest of that team's really solid, big defense. It's really it is completely a toss-up. But if you're forcing me for a pick, I'd go Dallas.
Jim Jackson, so glad we could finally make this happen. Thanks for visiting Philly Pressbox Radio. Enjoy your summer.
You too, Jim, anytime.
Man, I'll tell you what, Chet, there you go. There's a pro's pro right there.
He's good. He's good.
Yeah.
We already set a date for the fall. He's going to come back on with us and preview next season.
Fantastic. He was really good to listen to. And man, the 30 years and the whole Gene Hart thing. When you first opened up about the 30 years, I thought, man, it just doesn't seem like that. And my head was working the math. And then you said about Gene Hart, I was like, holy cow.
Yeah,
how did that
back
happen?
and forth between radio and TV until like 96 or whatever. But still, Jim Jackson there longer than Gene Hart. Amazing.
Yes, it is. Hey, one thing I wanted to go back to that I missed when I was talking about Joe Rapchinsky, and his great analysis on the Sixers Celtics. Joe also has a book called "The Junior Varsity Team is Playing." It's been nominated for induction into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. His book has, and what it's about. I don't want to give away the whole story, but when Joe was on the played at North Catholic, they were playing in the Philadelphia Catholic League Championship and had some team issues, and Joe was on the JV and ended up playing in that Catholic League Championship. So that's what the book's about. We're going to have to get Joe on with us and talk about that a little bit more, but it's a cool story. And his book has been nominated to go to the Basketball Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool in its own self.
Awesome. Look forward to meeting him.
All right. Well, hey, let's give a shout out to all the shows over at the Edge of Philly Sports Network this week. Well, they're all fired up about the Sixers too, and the Phillies. Geez, everybody's fired. Everybody's sour, Chet. Sour Philly fans. And you'll be hearing about it all week at the Edge of Philly Sports Network. You can check them out at www.eopsports.com, as well as Edge of Philly Sports on YouTube. You can find our show, Philly Pressbox Radio, on our YouTube channel as well. Help us out by hitting those like, follow, and subscribe buttons. And as always, share with your family and friends. Yes, sir. Hey, Chet, same story, different week for the Phillies. And I think they are, but they are at this point. JJ is a little more excited about them, I guess, than we are. Haven't lost again today. They're 3 games under 500. We're at the quarter season mark. Ranger Suarez is back. Belly Falter is not. But That plus minus I like to talk about, Chet. This was before last night's game. I did this yesterday. Phillies are minus 25, while the first place Braves are plus 68. That's my math tells me that's 93 run differential. It matters.
The amazing thing is that they're still very much in the wild card hunt, at least. I think they're like 2 games back now with today's loss. Their 4th straight loss, by the way. And what the hell's the matter with them out in San Francisco? The Phillies have lost 23 of their last 29 games out in San Francisco. Gabe Kapler is smiling inside as he's beating the Phils constantly now.
What is he? 12-3, I believe, against the Phillies. I think that's the right number. Now
Taijuan Walker was awful today. Couldn't get out of the first inning. Gave up 4 runs. He's been more awful than good this year. The bullpen actually did a nice job today until the 8th inning when Soto had a little trouble. He was getting little dink hits off him. He wasn't as bad as the numbers would illustrate, perhaps. But man, they lost 4 in a row after winning a bunch. They've been a very streaky team of late. They come home now for a series against the Cubs and Diamondbacks, and boy, they better pick up some ground soon. I know they're still right there in the wild card hunt, but still, they shouldn't be under 500 with that roster.
Well, there's a lot of kind of crazy things going on in my mind. You end up you have to pull Walker because he can't get anybody out today. You bring in Strom, but you only pitch him for a couple of innings. He throws 40 pitches, you take him out. Now you're bringing Brogdon in the 4th. They ended up using 7 pitchers through 8 innings. They go to Dominguez and Soto again today after they pitched last night. They created their own problems with Rob Thompson in that bullpen. And what in the world was he doing starting Brogdon the other night and then letting him throw for 2 outs and bring Falter in, who can't miss a bat?
Ask Ricky Bottalico how he feels about the starter or whatever it's called. What's that called? I
don't even know what it's called. It's called stupid to me, but I guess there's maybe some other term for it, but I don't get it. And and Brogdon didn't give up any runs, but he did put some guys on base. But then they took him out, didn't even let him get through that inning, and they brought Bailey Falter in. He gives up 6 runs, all unearned runs, by the way, because Bryson Stott decided to play kickball out there. Yeah. I mean, so there's Rob Thompson doing some funny things with those pitchers right now, I think.
Falter, by the way, with that great last name for a pitcher, Falter, 0-7 now, and so he's been sent down. So I don't know what they're going to do. They got to figure this out soon with the pitching because nobody's been great. I mean, even the 2 big guys, Wheeler and Nola, have been inconsistent. So they got to figure this out if they want to, compete.
Yeah, well, and I think the bullpen still, for the most part, has been fairly good. They're not going to be great every night. Yeah, but they're always in close games. They're not scoring runs like I think we expected them to. And the guys that were on fire to start the season have calmed down like you would expect. But somebody's got to pick this thing up, and they hitting season can't come soon enough, Chet.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, Bill, the Eagles schedule came out last week, and you know what that means. Cavs Philly Tailgates is going to start working on their menus for the fall and all those road trips with Philly sports trips. So regarding Cavs, Bob Cavanaugh at Cavs Philly Tailgates has been cooking up a terrific catering business for more than 30 years now, known best for their tailgate parties. Cavs is a 3-time winner of Philly Tailgates, Jack Daniels Great American Tailgate Party Contest, and a past winner of the Philly Daily News Tailgate Award. They got a big event coming up next month. It is the weekend that the Dodgers are in town. And check out this menu. This is what you'll find when you go to the Cavs Tailgate on June 10th. A lot of great food. Check out that menu. Cavs also, by the way, does corporate events, graduation parties, you name it. Cavs Philly Tailgates is the way to go. To get all the info, email them at cavscatering@verizon.net or check their website. That's probably easier, phillytailgates.com. And as we said, Cav does the Philly sports trips food menus for the home tailgates. And as far as the road trips, well, You know this, Philly Sports Trips is going to all of the Eagles road games this year, and there are 9 of them. There's the schedule. Philly Sports Trips will be going to all of those cities. The 2023 schedule is out. Know right now that Philly Sports Trips is finalizing trips to all of the road games with home tailgates in the works for most or all of the games at the link. Get all the info, all the details at phillysportstrips.com. They got other trips too this month and next month to Citi Field, Coors Field, Wrigley Field, and then out to Pittsburgh this summer, Petco Park in September. Again, phillysportstrips.com.
Well, Chet, all this sour Philly sports talk has kind of made me thirsty. And who knew that it was, what is it, American Craft Beer Week?
I knew. I'm going to call this a random chat, Bill, because this has just come some random stuff. I got a beer ready to go from Ship Bottom in New Jersey, Hefeweizen Ale. But I'll tell you who has great beers. That's this place up in Norristown. And I talked to 2 of the 3 co-founders there. And boy, this was a whole lot of fun. And Bill, I know that you were a Schmitz beer drinker back in the day, weren't you?
Well, I can't say I was because I was a little young at the time, but my dad was. For a while there. So, you know, there might have been sneaking a couple out of the basement refrigerator.
I snuck a few Schmitz. Well, you're going to like this story then because Schmitz gets mentioned prominently in it. Here's my interview with the guys from Von C. Well, this happens to be American Craft Beer Week, so I thought it'd be a great time to visit one of the many great craft breweries in the area, Von C Brewing in Norristown. And it's a real pleasure now to be joined by the brewery's co-founders, 2 of them anyway, Jay and Eric Von Czoernig.
Welcome.
Guys, how are you?
Checking us out. We're good. Unfortunately, our brother Rick couldn't be here today, but he's here in spirit.
Jay, your family has a long history in the beer business. We'll get to that in just a minute. But when did you guys open this great brewery here in Norristown?
So we signed the lease the March before the pandemic really got crazy. So we did the whole build out during the pandemic. We are able to open our doors June 5th of 2021.
I mentioned the history. Your family's brewing goes back some 160 plus years, and it's connected to a very well-known brand in the Philadelphia area. Tell us about that.
It is. So we are 6 generations removed from Christian Schmidt, who came and started the brewery in Philadelphia in 1860. Our father was a master brewer. Our grandfather was a master brewer. Our uncle was a master brewer. Again, dating all the way back to 1860 to Christian Schmidt, who came over to Germany to start the brewery.
Eric, a lot of breweries are pretty small in size, but this place is huge. You got a lot of space here.
Yeah, it's 16,000 square feet.
And you have indoor area and outdoor and storage area, the vats.
Yeah, we have an outdoor beer garden, and then our tasting room is,
2,500 inside, about another 3,000 square feet outside.
But tell me more about the history, Jay. How did it, come from Schmitz to what it is now, Von C?
So I wrote the original business plan for Von C Brewing back in 1993. It was my senior project at Northeastern University. We knew we were going to do it. We just didn't know exactly when we were going to do it. We were fairly close to opening the brewery in 94. And then life kind of got in the way, other careers, family. And then we kind of got back in, dusted off the old business plan. And here we are today and opening the brewery.
I got to be honest, until about 6 or 7 years ago, I was a pretty boring beer drinker, the basic cheap light beers out there, till a friend of mine convinced me to try a bunch of different craft brews. And before long, I was hooked. What I love are the many varieties of beers that are out there. You got lagers and Belgian whites, ales, pilsners, porters, stouts, IPAs, double IPAs. And every brewer, it seems, puts his or her own spin on them. How much fun is it coming up with these new concoctions?
It's awesome. Our brew team has done an incredible job with all the beers that they do. And we're lucky enough to have Adam Brosetti on our brew team, who was the last master brewer of Schmitz. And he's helping us revive some of these older recipes like the OG Pills, which is a family recipe dating back to 1860. Our Prior, which is a beer that was brewed in Norristown right down the street here from the mid-50s to late 70s. So he's helping us revitalize those and keeping a close eye on Michael Froelich, who's our master brewer, but they've done an incredible job.
You mentioned the OG Pills, which I'm putting up on the screen right now. How does that connect to Schmitz? Is it the same recipe? Did you adapt it and make it more modern, change it in any way?
That is the family recipe dating back to 1860. Still helpful watching an eye of Adam Brosetti, making sure we're doing it correctly. But it is as close as you can get with today's ingredients to the recipe back to 1860.
Eric, what's your favorite beer?
The OG is my favorite. That's an easy drinking beer. And it's style I like.
I had it when I was here in January, liked it, ended up buying a 4-pack a day or two later. Back in my
That's what we like to hear.
Hamilton, New Jersey area. One of my
Nice.
local shops had it, so it was great to find that and see it on the shelves. We'll get back to this chat with Von C's Jay and Eric in a second, but there's an important update about what we were just talking about, OG Pils. That legendary Philly lager has taken the gold medal in the American Pilsner category at the 2023 World Beer Cup competition. There were more than 100 entries in that category, and Von C's OG Pils took the top prize. Pretty impressive. Now back to our interview. Well, Jay, the weather is warming up. You have a great beer garden here. What's the summer going to be like for Von C?
Summer should be good. That's, again, the outside beer garden always does quite well for us. We have food trucks Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. When the weather permits, cornholes outside, live bands outside, and, a bunch of couches and chairs and tables and cornholes. So it all's good.
As I show a little video of all the beer vats here, what is the brewing process? How do you get an idea for a beer, and how long does it take to actually make it and get it out there?
So it really depends on what you're trying to make. We have a 20-barrel brew house, meaning every time we brew, it's 40 half kegs worth of beer, about 640 gallons. We have 7 40-barrel fermenters and 2 40-barrel brights, so we can double batch into our fermenters, giving us capacity. For us, obviously, if you're making an ale, you're looking at about a 2-week time span between when we're going to brew, fermentation, and then packaging. If we're doing our lagers, depending on the lagers, it's anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks, depending on what kind of beer it is. Our Helles lager, 100% German ingredients, is going to take that full 12 weeks to lager.
For us, it all starts with the grains. Grains will get milled in our mill room, get dumped into the mash tun. From the mash tun, it's going to go over to the kettle and get boiled. Some hops will be added. Then it ends up in one of our 7 40-barrel fermenters. At the end of fermentation, we'll transfer it to the 2 bright tanks, 2 40-barrel brights. And from there, it's going to go into either cans, 6-ounce kegs, or half kegs to go in bars and restaurants.
I am not an IPA guy. A lot of people love IPAs. Is that the top seller here in IPA, or is it the OG Pils, or what?
So we can basically tell the average age in the tap room by what is selling the most that night. It is either between the OG Pils or the Walk On Clouds. If it's the Walk On Clouds, obviously there's a little younger crowd in the tap room that night. If it's the OG Pils, it's a little older crowd in the tap room that night. But we're super proud that the OG Pils, a American light lager, is really kind of one of our flagship beers.
Yeah, I'm a lager Belgian white kind of guy primarily, so those are among my favorites. Well, it is American Craft Beer Week. How has craft beer, become so popular over the last 20 years?
It's great. I mean, as you said before, hey, I was a kind of boring beer drinker 6, 8, 10 years ago. You can come into these breweries like ours and all the great ones in Pennsylvania and surrounding areas and get, beers that were almost long lost styles, whether it's a Grisette, whether it's a Vienna lager, whether it's a Helles lager, whether it's a German Pilsner. You weren't able to walk into a bar back in 10 years ago and find those things. You were lucky to be able to find a Guinness. So the fact that the craft beer revolution has brought that on, and it's so good quality now because of how many there are, that it's an incredible thing to see.
Well, I'm drinking an Uncle Jerry's Wit right here. Who's Uncle Jerry?
So my wife's uncle was very, very kind to us, and any of the blue floors that you see out in the brewery that are sloped, he does a lot of construction in New York City and sent his crew down here. They excavated and sloped all over floors, and luckily for us, all he wanted was a beer named after him, and his 2 favorite beers were Allgash Blue Moon, and we made him the Uncle Jerry's Wit.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, it's terrific. I really like it.
And the likeness is very beautiful. He actually looks a lot like that.
Nice. Again, as I mentioned, it is American Craft Beer Week. Celebrate appropriately and responsibly, folks, maybe here at Von C in Norristown. Thanks so much for doing this, Jay and Eric. Oh, 2 other things. Shame on me for failing to discuss this with Jay and Eric. But when you go to Von C, be sure to check out the wall of the men's room. Not sure if the ladies' room has a wall like this. I didn't go in there. But the men's room back wall is an end-to-end collage of vintage Schmidt's beer logos and advertisements and pictures related to the end of Prohibition and other fun beer stuff. It is a must-see. Separately, Von C will celebrate its 2nd anniversary the entire weekend of June 2nd through the 4th with new beer releases, live music, and all sorts of fun. Again, my thanks to Jay and Eric. Their brewery is definitely worth checking out. It is Von C Brewing in Norristown, Pennsylvania. I'm Chet. Cheers.
Well, Chet, it seems like there needs to be a trip to Norristown in my future when I come up there. That looks like a really cool place, and the history, the historical pictures and all was really neat.
6 generations, from the Schmitz guys back in the 1860s. And I'm telling you, that wall of the men's room, I felt kind of creepy hanging out in the men's room, but I was in there just looking at everything on the wall.
Taking pictures in the men's room, too.
I know. I was alone, so it's okay. But yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
Well, I tell you what, I know my buddy Bob Sullivan is watching, and I know that he's got some family members that used to really enjoy some Schmitz beer. So, I'm thinking that might be a trip that we might have to make when I get back up
and
there
the
to
OG
the area.
Pills is good. I said to the guys, I said, you kind of think of Schmitz as a cheap, nothing fancy beer, but I don't know. It's really good. They said it's the same recipe. And all of a sudden, I'm a Schmitz beer fan, OG Pills. I highly recommend it.
There you go. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Hey, Bill, before we wrap up, we got to sneak in a little talk about what the NFL is doing. Next January 13th, the NFL, looking to, I guess, make even more money, is going to stream one of its wild card playoff games on Peacock, which means if you live out of the market, you're going to have Peacock, or you're not going to get to see that wild card game that Saturday night. Now, if you're in one of the markets of the competing teams, you're okay because it will be on one of the NBC affiliates. But if it's, say, the Vikings and Rams playing and you want to watch it in Philly, you're going to have to either go to somebody's house who has Peacock or spring for Peacock yourself if you don't already pay for it.
Yeah, well, it's the beginning, and we'll talk a lot more about this because I certainly have some thoughts about the whole NFL and the whole sports scene. But I'll leave you with this one thought.
Yeah,
I think they feel, and they're probably right, that fans will never go away, no matter what they do and what it costs. They'll put people in the stadium. They'll sell $20 beers, $50 parking. And people will show up. I think that's just the way it is. And plenty more to talk about with that, though.
The problem is they're spreading it around so much. I mean, you already have the games on Amazon now on Thursday nights and now a Black Friday game. And now they're going to put a playoff game, a wild card game on Peacock. How many more streaming things are we going to have to pay for if we want to see everything? So we'll talk about that another time in more detail.
And obviously we're not happy about that, and neither is any other fan going to be happy about that for sure. Well, hey, Chad, great guest tonight, Jim Jackson, the Eric and Jay von Czoernig. Who's coming to Philly Pressbox Radio next week?
First of all, congratulations on pronouncing their name right.
How about that?
I'm impressed.
Twice.
We haven't talked with this guy in over a year, our guest next week. He was supposed to be with us a couple of months ago, but had to reschedule. He is a big part of the 94 WIP afternoon show with Marks and Reese. And then he hosts the Fritz at 6 hour there most days. Plus, he does a whole bunch of podcasts, such as the High Hopes pod that he does with James Seltzer. It is Jack Fritz. He's also a new dad, by the way, a new dad. And we will talk Phillies and Eagles next week with Jack Fritz.
All right. Good stuff. All right. Let's take another quick break and thank our friends at the PPCC 118 Raz Room. They post great sports memorabilia on their Facebook page so people can take a chance of winning something they may not be able to afford or have access to. All items come with certificates of authenticity. You continue to run out great autographed memorabilia from all the Philly teams and more. Check out their Facebook page. Like it or follow it. It's PPCC 118 Raz Room. That's right. PPCC 118 Raz Room on Facebook.
How the hell did we fit everything in tonight, Bill?
I don't know, Chet. I just have one more thing to ask you about since we don't have a lot of time. The Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue is out. And 81-year-old Martha Stewart is on one of the 4 covers. You like that?
I do. I mean, I watch the Today Show most mornings, and so Martha revealed this Monday morning when she was on there. First, I thought it was a joke. I swear to God, I couldn't believe that it was real. But no, it is in fact real. She is one of the 4 cover girls at age 81. And she looks good. She looks very good. So I think it's nice. I'm going to probably opt for the Megan Fox one if I go out and purchase it, though.
So you're going to be waiting at your mailbox for your Martha Stewart.
I haven't subscribed to SI in like 25 years, but
maybe Denny will get that for you.
Yeah. I have bought the swimsuit issue many times over the years, and maybe I'll get Martha's just for the hell of it.
Oh, well, Jane has a comment about that.
She thinks that she's got so much work or whatever, they can, touch everything up, and that she pays for, whatever it takes to look good. I don't know. Give Martha some credit. She said she worked hard, that she actually worked out, did a lot of Pilates since November when they were, told her that they were going to take these pictures in January. So
maybe it's
kudos to
from hanging out.
Martha.
Maybe it's from hanging out with Snoop.
Yeah.
All right. Let's wrap it up. Thank tonight's special guests, Jim Jackson, Eric and Jay Von Czoernig. Our sponsors, the Irish Rover Station House, Cavs Philly Tailgate, PPCC 118 Raz Room, and Dave Lavoie of Allstate Insurance in Westchester, PA. For Jim Chesko, this is Bill Furman. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll join Philly Press Box Radio next Wednesday, May 24th at 7 p.m. You can see us live on Facebook. Listen through our website, phillypressboxradio.com, on Google Podcasts, as well as Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and all the others. With that, high hopes, Philadelphia sports fans.
Happy trails to you till we meet again.